morning and welcome to Rising. Happy Monday. We are back in our usual studio, for better or worse. I don't know if it's still haunted. There's ghosts somewhere. I was hoping they were going to do an exorcism to make sure everything's fine.
All the things that we want are in the studio,
yes.
Yeah. Little by little, Robby. It'll be just in time for after the election. People can calm down, breathe. We'll get to the least, I guess, less important stuff.
Do you think there'll be a day where we all calm down?
No, I don't.
I
mean, if I were the next president, I would have a national day of calm. Just a little meditation in everybody's day.
That sounds good. All right, that's the platform we'll be running on here at Rising. Let's get into our top news story. Democrats are entering full panic mode over Elon Musk. No chill there. Pennsylvania Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro called on law enforcement to potentially investigate Elon over his promise to give away $1 million every day until the election. Now, to be clear, here's what Musk is planning to do. He's giving $1 million each day to someone who signs an online petition that reads, quote, "The First and Second Amendments guarantee freedom of speech and the right to bear arms. By signing below, I am pledging my support for the First and Second Amendments." To be eligible for the $1 million, those who sign must be registered voters and live in one of the 7 swing states. The petition also offers $100 to each registered Pennsylvanian voter who signs, and $100 if you refer a registered Pennsylvanian voter, a friend, to sign. Here's one of the lucky winners, John Dreher.
Hey, my name's John, and I came here to see Elon Musk and support Trump to be the next president, and just see everyone in person, attend a great rally, and see a lot of patriots together. When he called me, the first thing that happened, I screamed, and it was $1 million, and I was pumping my check in the air, pumping my arms in the air, and I went up, and actually meeting Elon, I kind of forgot about the money for a little bit, since he's such an influential figure. For guys my age who are working hard every day, and it's really important to get out and vote.
To date, Musk has given away $75 million to America PAC, which supports Donald Trump. As a reminder, Trump said if elected, he would establish a government efficiency commission with Musk at the helm. So it makes sense why we've seen so much of Musk on the campaign trail in recent days. But the reason Democrats are concerned over Musk's $1 million incentives is because it could be illegal. For context, it's a federal crime to pay people with the intention of inducing or rewarding them to cast a vote to get registered. Take a listen to Pennsylvania Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro.
You are a former attorney general. Is this legal?
I think there are real questions with how he is spending money in this race, how the dark money is flowing, not just into Pennsylvania, but apparently now into the pockets of Pennsylvanians. That is deeply concerning. Look, Musk obviously has a right to be able to express his views. He's made it very, very clear that he supports Donald Trump. I don't, obviously we have a difference of opinion. I don't deny him that right. But when you start flowing this kind of money into politics, I think it raises serious questions that folks may want to take a look at.
So you think it might not be legal, yes or no?
I think it's something that law enforcement could take a look at.
Well, that was vague. Musk explained his push into politics over the weekend. Let's hear what he had to say.
I don't want to be in politics. I want to be clear. That is not my preference. I just like building stuff. I like building products that people love, and I derive joy from seeing people enjoy the products that my companies make. So I like making products people love, and that's what I normally like doing, and I actually don't like politics at all. I hate politics. but the stakes are so high here that I have had no choice but to take a stand.
It wasn't just Shapiro panicking over Musk's $1 million prizes. Twitter personality Ron Filipkowski wrote, quote, "I don't understand why Elon Musk can't simply advocate and campaign for Trump on the merits of the man and his ideas rather than resorting to fake websites and texts, impersonating the Harris campaign to deceive voters while holding daily $1 million lotteries for supporters. Another Twitter influencer, Will Stancil, said, quote, "I'm telling you, the scale of Elon's intervention into this election is without precedent. He's pushing every envelope, running the Trump field operation, buying votes with million-dollar lotteries, flooding House races with cash, even AI-generated ads." He goes on to say, "There appears to be no ethical or legal boundary Elon won't push with unfathomable wealth behind it." Boo-hoo. All those poor little tears. Look, Elon supports Donald Trump. He's made no secret of that, obviously. It is not illegal to give people money at random to sign a petition. So that is
It is
definitely not illegal. They're not doing anything wrong.
Lottery. So the reason why he's able to get away with this, and it's still questionable because it's unprecedented.
I mean, it's questionable because Democrats want to criminalize everything, but
well, no, we have campaign finance laws for a reason. Otherwise, corporations could fund candidates directly. But we do have some.
Now they just fund them indirectly.
Barriers.
They just fund them indirectly. They're still funding them. They're
still funding them.
There's an extra step.
There's an extra step, and he is trying to skirt that extra step. And the question is whether or not that's legal. They don't know for sure. But the loophole is that he's doing it through a lottery system. Mm-hmm. His super PAC, which he founded, but he is not an actual officer of, which is important. You know, I have an officer in LLCs and companies, so he's not the treasurer or the president. So he's technically not legally responsible to this PAC, which is really important too, because if he were, that would be a major violation because super PACs cannot, and outside organizations cannot directly coordinate with the campaign. Right. So this is how he can put money into a PAC and then go on the campaign stage with Donald Trump and get away with all that. He might get a fine, right? He might get a fine before the election, after the election, but of course he can afford it. And if it is more serious, if anything he's doing is more serious, and I'm sure people are looking into it, it'll happen after the election.
I mean, it goes to show you how silly a lot of these campaign finance laws are. I know the idea of getting money out of politics is very appealing to a lot of people of different ideological bents. I understand it. I particularly don't like the level of influence that that businesses, unions, etc., can buy with the money they give to candidates. But what we did was just, instead of directly giving it, now you do the PAC. They indirectly coordinate with the campaigns, and we haven't solved the problem at all. We've just made it. What we've done is create a class of DC insidery people whose job is to still, facilitate the exchange of those lobbying dollars. Now they understand the laws and the loopholes, and it's slightly more difficult, and it actually, I think, ends up entrenching people who understand the ins and outs of the system a bit better, makes it harder for the common man to participate in the political process. But this goes to how can you see it as anything other than a full anti-Elon panic among Democrats and journalist people? Whatever. Trump has a big, wealthy, powerful supporter. Kamala Harris has a lot of those too. Donald Trump has a lot of those. Joe Biden has a lot of those. There's nothing new about it. She took a picture with Alex Soros the other day.
Yeah, but Alex Soros he runs a foundation. He doesn't run a PAC, and and he's the grandchild. Listen, they invest in humanitarian organizations all around the world. I think the concern with Elon Musk is that he's weaponizing a tool that we all used to use for discourse. It's not illegal, but he's weaponizing X. He's skirting a lot of laws. Now, I would say what you will about super PACs creating these cottage industries and also hiding donors, by the way, because a lot of the donors in super PACs and 501c4s are not disclosed, right? It's very hard to trace the money. So that's a concern. Whereas before, even with our weakened campaign finance rules, before Citizens United, there were still limits on contributions to political parties and to candidates. Now you can circumnavigate that through a super PAC. But really, we need supreme campaign finance reform and, frankly, public financing, because we can afford it. We have all this excess money sitting around in places, and I know you take all that waste that does exist. There's absolutely waste, without a doubt. We have the Government Accountability Office, and let's put it into public financing. And Donald Trump doesn't want to raise money. He doesn't want to put his own money in. And I'm sure billionaires don't want to put their own money in. So why not give it a fair shot? And everybody gets the right to...
My contrarian response to that is, I think that as long as what the government does is as long as the government is big and powerful, and there's a lot it can do to help or hurt specific interests, specific firms, as long as that is the case, those firms or interest groups will find ways to spend their money for political purposes, no matter how, and you can make it more difficult and you can make it more complicated, and they will still find ways, as they did under our existing campaign finance structure that we all don't like. So my solution would not be to actually even try to stop firms, special interest groups from spending their money this way, but to have what the government does be less important to how they run their businesses, and then they won't bother spending money because it doesn't influence them. As long as it's winner take all, big and vast at the federal level, there will be interest groups feeling like they need to spend money on this thing.
Listen, it happens in New York City. We have a public finance system in New York City, and now at the state level, this is the first year we're going to deal with it at the state level, where if you raise a certain amount of money under $250 in New York City or state, you get either $8 in New York City or $12 at the state level from the public. But of course, what happens is this is a handout to consultants, and if you are an interest group, sometimes, because we have ranked choice voting in New York City, they'll run multiple candidates to play off of each other, and it's really kind of old-fashioned Tammany Hall. Still rewards the consultants, it still rewards the interest groups. It might be more fair, and it is a good system, I think, to level the playing field. So Michael Bloomberg, I mean, people can still come in, like opt out of the system, like Michael Bloomberg, and still use their own personal money to buy an election. So it's not loophole-free, but it is definitely easier to be a normal person and run for office. With that being said, the federal level for president and Senate, let's just have a campaign period. We really didn't need this extra time. Do you remember 2 weeks ago, you and I were just tired of the same campaign arguments, and we're all like, all right, undecided is just
tired
decide.
today.
I'm tired of it. Now we're in the final stretch, so there's like spicy stuff happening, but we really
remain
don't need
tired.
elections this long.
Yeah.
It's going to be an over $1 billion. On her side, Kamala Harris,
They keep saying
$1.2 billion, and that doesn't count PACs. On his side, it's probably way more with PACs.
They keep saying, if your candidate doesn't win, this is going to be the last election. I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound too bad. Don't threaten me with a good time. All right, we've got a lot more to get to on Rising today. We're going to talk about the McDonald's photo op. Stay tuned. Donald Trump's hunt for the Hamburglar is on. Both him and Kamala Harris spent the weekend campaigning in the Keystone state of Pennsylvania as the final stretch of the race begins. Now, Trump slinged French fries at a McDonald's in Bucks County during his first stop in the Keystone state. Let's watch.
Hello, everybody. I'm looking for a job, and I've always wanted to work at McDonald's, but I never did. I'm running against somebody that said she did, but it turned out to be a totally phony story. So if you don't mind, I want to work the French fry counter.
Now, in this photo op with pre-selected drive-through patrons, a group of reporters in tow, the former president repeatedly accused Harris of lying about having ever worked at McDonald's through college. Conservative commentator Jeff Charles praised Trump's stop at a McDonald's, calling it clever, posting on X, quote, "Here's why he's in Pennsylvania, a critical swing state. It's absolutely hilarious. Look at him in that apron. He comes off as someone who connects with ordinary people. You can tell he's having a blast. Kamala could not have pulled this off." A patron from Brazil pulled up to the drive-through window. Here was her exchange with Trump.
Mr. President, please don't let the United States become Brazil, my native Brazil.
We'll keep it good.
Please.
We're going to make it better than ever, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, Mr.
Compliments
President.
of Trump.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
McDonald's USA released a lengthy statement following Trump's visit, writing, quote, "Though we are not a political brand, we've been proud to hear former President Trump's love for McDonald's and Vice President Harris's fond memories working under the arches." The company acknowledged they don't have records of who worked there dating back to the 1980s.
The Harris campaign seized on his McDonald's pit stop. Spokesperson Joseph Costello said, quote, "Today, Donald Trump showed exactly what we would see in a second Trump term, exploiting working people for his own personal gain." President of the United Auto Workers Union, Sean Feen, slammed Trump. Let's watch.
Donald Trump, a 78-year-old who's never earned a real paycheck in his life, was putting on a show, playing dress up at McDonald's to act like he is one of us. I mean, think about that. I mean, he spent his life screwing over workers, and his next act, Project 2025, will make it even harder for Pennsylvania workers and their families to get by, all while making Trump and his billionaire buddies even richer. But again, another twisted irony in Trump's dress-up show today. Kamala Harris doesn't have to put on a show. She doesn't have to play dress-up at McDonald's because she actually wore the uniform.
Meanwhile, Harris sought to court independent and moderate Republican voters visiting vote-rich counties in 3 Great Lakes swing states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, Monday with former Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney. Harris told reporters she and Cheney will, quote, talk with folks about why it's important for us to put country before party and value the very important foundational principles that we stand on.
So I thought the McDonald's thing was pretty great, good. Yes, it was a photo op type thing, but right now Democrats are like pretending like this is the first time this has ever happened, where you have a politician like, you know, serving soft serve ice cream or flipping burgers or, you know, handing out food to union workers or veterans or something. Like, this is just very standard campaigning. So I don't understand why they're acting like he's done something wrong or unusual.
I think what was so incredible about
let me read. So,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Ron Filipkowski,
yeah,
you know, deranged anti-Trump Twitter personality. The place wasn't even open. It was all staged and fake. He didn't work for real at McDonald's. It was staged fraud, just like every other event. Like,
yeah, that was dumb.
Settle down.
I mean, this is where Democrats drive me crazy. You don't just have to be opposite of everything. You can be more strategic and thoughtful about it. He looked like Ronald McDonald, and you can't deny that. He had the red tie on.
Why would you deny it? It's funny.
It was funny. It was funny. But again, I would have made fun of the fact that he still had his what do they call the little pins there?
I don't know.
You know what they are.
I don't.
Cufflinks, that's the term. Thank you. So he couldn't even roll up his sleeve. He had his red tie on, his cufflinks.
That was funny.
It was funny, but I don't know if it got the point across. 1 out of 8 Americans has worked at McDonald's. I mean, the average age of a worker at McDonald's today is 23 years old. It is a big part of our culture. Yeah. I don't know if it really made him look like he was more in touch, the way that, you know, Bill Clinton looked like he was in touch when he came back from his jogging trip and walked into McDonald's and in that famous SNL skit where he would, in real life, Bill Clinton went to McDonald's and ordered some food. But in SNL, the skit was he went to everybody's table and was just eating food off of their table.
I remember that one.
I can't wait for SNL to have fun with this one. But you're right. Every
funny.
politician does stuff like this. It's just when Donald Trump does it, he makes it even funnier because he's so over the top and he's a comedy act in his own right.
So let's talk a little bit about Kamala Harris having worked at McDonald's, because she claims that she did, and there's a friend who said that she did. Fine, I'm not denying it. I'm not trying to be some McDonald's Kamala truther or something, but Trump keeps saying, no, she didn't. There isn't actually any evidence she did. And then the media will say it's an unsubstantiated claim that Trump says she didn't work at McDonald's. I'm like, well, I think it's an unsubstantiated claim that she did work there. But there's no reason specifically to distrust that she ever worked there, but they have not, again, we don't have records of her working here. We don't have robust, it's not the biggest deal, and if she says it, it's fine, but I don't like that the media keeps saying his part of it is unsubstantiated. Her part of it is unsubstantiated.
Well, you don't prove a lie. I mean, you don't prove, he's trying to, it's hard to disprove somebody, and this is the oldest trick in the book is, you know, steer the conversation in that direction, put the burden on her. Oh, the media, you haven't gone out and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars investigating her McDonald's experience because she mentioned it in one speech a few months ago. We've all had jobs like that. Do we have photos, especially back to the 80s? Do you have photos of everything? They don't keep records. It's silly. It's a distraction. Look, we're spending an entire segment about this. McDonald's Gate, I don't think most Americans care. I think he's just very defensive over the fact that he was born with so much money and he has never had to probably prepare a meal for himself in his own life. Maybe he takes some like hot sauce and puts it on his nachos that he ate at Trump Tower. Remember that? When he's like, oh, I got this. He didn't even
He puts ketchup on the steak.
It's disgusting. His Trump steak that was like spoiled that he was selling to people.
And he likes them well done too. That's the real offense. Ketchup goes perfectly well with steak. There's nothing weird about it. Steak is beef. You put ketchup on your hamburger.
Your hamburglar?
Your hamburglar. I think I said this last week. I haven't had McDonald's in many years, but their fries are good.
Yes, they were voted the #1 fries in the world this year. Still, after
I like the waffle fries at Chick-fil-A. I go to Chick-fil-A when I go to New York. I love their waffle fries, and my favorite thing about Chick-fil-A is the Hawaiian or Polynesian sauce. I love that sauce.
So I have to admit something. I don't usually eat.
This is my series arc. I don't eat meat.
Szechuan,
Mulan, McNugget sauce. Viewers know what I'm talking. No,
Okay.
viewers know what I'm talking about. I'm doing a Rick and Morty reference.
God,
You don't
need
know
to
this
watch
one.
one episode just so I know what you're
Yeah.
talking about. So I pulled over at on the way down here from New York a few days ago, and I was so hungry, and I went to Burger King, and I had not been to Burger King or McDonald's in probably 20 years, and they have a vegetarian burger now, and I ordered it. It was an Impossible Burger. It was so disgusting. It was like they didn't know what to do with it. I literally spit it all out. And also, I'm sorry, since when does it cost like $24 for fries, a drink, and a burger? Like,
Since Joe Biden became president. No.
$24?
That's insane, really?
That's insane. Is that normal? Please, people tell me, is this what McDonald's and Burger King cost now?
We're gonna all go to at Taco Bell. I think they'll let you say like, I have $9.75 to spend. How many? What? Everything I can get on the menu for that, and you can get like everything. I hope that's still the case. I hope that's still the case.
And they also have vegetarian Beyond Beef tacos, which
Yeah.
I'm all down for. So they're bringing me back in. I stopped
Yeah.
eating there, and now look at
This is why I almost never go to like Starbucks. I'm not gonna pay as much as a sandwich costs for a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Price is getting outrageous.
Although in New York now it's cheaper than your average cup of coffee, like
Is
a
it
nice
really?
coffee on the street. Yeah.
I don't mean to specifically call them out. I haven't been there in a while.
How
Coming up,
ridiculous.
coming up next, Trump was interviewed by Fox News over the weekend. We will take a look at that. Much more rising still to come.
Former President Donald Trump was grilled by Fox News this weekend. Fox anchor Howard Kurtz challenged Trump on his characterization of January 6th Capitol riot as a day of love. Let's watch.
There was nobody killed here. Nobody had guns here either.
There were people with guns.
Well,
who were arrested.
really? I'd like to know. You mean in the rally, or they had some guns at their home?
No,
someplace?
at the rally.
Oh, really? Well, I have not heard that at all. No, I don't think so. They had no guns. They had no guns.
So
that was a peaceful.
So you're comfortable
peaceful
with a
and
day of
patriotic-
love?
No,
You wouldn't modify that?
I'm talking about when I made that speech. I've never seen anything like it.
Kurtz pushed Trump on admitting the narrative about Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio eating pets is in fact false. This is how he responded.
20,000 legal Haitian immigrants settling in that area causes a lot of friction. But when you said, and you know it's gone viral, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, you say you're just reporting what had been said. But why not say now, well, look, that turned out not to be true.
I don't know if
Here's
it's
my
not true.
verdict.
I don't know if it's true or not true. I read
Eating
something.
the pets, you don't know if it's true or not true?
No.
It's been debunked by
Well,
local
they say,
officials.
what about the goose, the geese? What about the geese? What happened there? They were all missing. I don't
was
know.
one
Listen,
guy with
Howie,
two geese.
Howie, I have no idea.
What I find interesting about this is there's something about Howard Kurtz. He's like the media whisperer to Donald Trump. Maybe it's just because they've known each other for years. Maybe it's his sort of like, listen, pal, what do you mean? Like they're at the dinner table.
Yeah, I thought Kurtz did a good job. I'm on the show sometimes. I'm friendly with him. I think he's a pretty, down the line, middle of the road, balls and strikes kind of commentator, and he has aggressive questioning of Republicans and Democrats. Donald Trump knows that's what he's getting into with Howard Kurtz because he's talked to him before, so good on him for doing that. And Howard did push him on those couple subjects. I think Trump demonstrated where he does, of course, get himself into trouble, is just saying, well, I just saw it online, so I just said it. And right, the plausible was the complaints from people in the neighborhood had to do with birds in a park, had nothing to do with cats and dogs. That was an invented internet rumor that involved a different town and did not involve Haitians. So if you could just be a little bit more disciplined, you can still, of course, make your same criticisms about the effect migrants are having, or if the town took in too many and difficulties that caused in terms of the public resources or the social services being strained now that the town wanted to bring these people in to do work and to contribute, and I'm all for that. I want immigrants to come in legally and contribute to enriching our nation and working here and building things, but we have to be cognizant of strains we'll have on social services. I think that's totally reasonable, or cultural differences. That's not unique to Haitians by any stretch of the imagination. All of our ancestors faced cultural differences from the existing population when they came here, and sometimes that we're a big melting pot, and sometimes we have tensions in our country because we are a place where lots of different people from lots of different walks of life come together to live hopefully harmoniously, and it doesn't always quite work out like that. So totally fine to ask questions about what's going on, but got to stick to the truthful element of it.
Yeah, and as we know, the mayor of Springfield has expressed that these were legal immigrants who are welcomed, who are integrated in the community, and for the most part, with exception to every community has their extremist, including the woman who said that she saw this when indeed she actually heard it from a friend, and then the friend said something. It was a game of telephone, but it went to the worst levels, to a presidential debate through J.D. Vance. I find it fascinating. What's really amazing about this interview is how Howard Kurtz was able to penetrate him so he wasn't like defensive the way he is with most journalists, and maybe it's just the tone and how they kept it conversational.
It's a remarkable and specific skill, I agree with you.
It really was, and I think everybody should take note. And it disarmed him, so he still was defending himself and sounded like a moron, but he was like, well, I don't know, he just sounded like that crazy grandfather that was, well, Grandpa, where did you actually learn about this? Well, my grandkids showed me a thing on the phone, and then I clicked on that, and then there was a picture of it. Oh, grandfather, that was AI. What's AI? Like, that's how he sounded, because he is 78 years old and is definitely not on top of it all the time. I wonder how much of Donald Trump this is just Donald Trump playing the games that he plays, creating his own truth in his own little echo chambers, which is absolutely true, and how much of it is him just losing his mind.
I don't think he's... I always find that I don't think he's losing his mind. He's an older man, but he seems exactly himself. I don't see any difference in his cognitive output or what he says or how he describes things, contrasting that with the person who is ostensibly the president right now, not that you hear very much from him, who is clearly
Did an interview
and
yesterday.
Totally incapable of running the country, of making high-pressure decisions about foreign policy, who is only awake and alive for a constrained number of hours a day. That is, to me, outrageous
Robby,
and unacceptable. But
so out of proportion. First off, the Democrats were aware of it, but it does not mean that he's incapable of running.
We got to catch him between 10 and 4.
That's fine.
I hope nothing happens.
Take a nap. Like, it's fine.
Yeah,
10 and 4. Donald Trump is exhausted.
as you well know, it's not between the hours of 10 and 4 everywhere on the planet Earth at the same time.
Although it is 5 o'clock somewhere, everywhere. R.I.P. Jimmy Buffett. Donald Trump. No, but Donald Trump, the way things are escalating, and if you watch 1980s Trump and 90s Trump and 2000s Trump with The Apprentice, he was sharper, or at least he was more restrained. Even if he thought some of these things, he was restrained. Now it's like every day he says something just a little bit extra. And every single day I wonder, is this man, he's unchecked for sure. Like everybody around him is, I don't think they're controlling him. I don't think they're letting Trump be full Trump like they did in 2016. But he's taking it to another level where I don't think he realizes, he's not reading the room. I don't think he realizes.
How is it on a different level than Kamala Harris? How is it any different? You know, we saw her answering a question. No, I think it's exactly the same. We saw her answering a question, the edited question from 60 Minutes, where the reporter says, isn't it pretty clear Netanyahu isn't listening to you? And then she said, well, there are actions we have taken to do things to have them take a different action. What are you talking about? A, no, you haven't, and B, that doesn't make any sense.
Okay, that's a substantive answer, right?
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, it was a substantive with Donald Trump that Howard Kurtz said, challenged him on they're not actually eating cats and dogs, and then Donald Trump said, well, but what about the birds?
What about going after political enemies? I mean, every day he says something new. We're going to discuss one a little bit later. That was an obvious one with Arnold Palmer, but we'll save that for another
conversation. Going after political enemies. I mean, Josh Shapiro said he wants to bring a legal action against Elon Musk for
a legal action because
for
he violating
incentivizing people to register to vote, which I thought was a good thing.
It might be a good thing, but it is possibly against campaign finance law. What Donald Trump is proposing
I don't think campaign
is
finance law should get in the way of registering people to vote. That's
going after political enemies
I'm
with
just
the military, pro-democracy. Except you're okay with them going after political enemies with the military?
No, we're not going. We ain't going after political enemies. That's not we should not be doing that.
Yeah.
All right. Next up on Rising, we're going to talk about a secret report that leaked detailing Israeli plans to potentially strike Iran.
The U.S. is investigating an unauthorized release of classified documents that assess Israel's plan to attack Iran. The documents are attributed to the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and National Security Agency, NSA. They note that Israel was still moving military assets in place for a military strike in response to Iran's October 1st attack. They were allegedly shared with the U.S., Great Britain, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. The docs are marked top secret and were posted to the Telegram messaging app and were first reported by CNN. The investigation is also looking into how the docs were obtained, including whether it was an intentional leak or a hack.
In the wake of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar's death, the U.S. has urged Israel to press for a ceasefire in Gaza. The U.S. has also cautioned Israel not to further expand military operations in northern Lebanon. Still, Israel's leadership has continued to stress it will not let Iran's missiles attack go unanswered. So this is, again, confirmation that behind the scenes there are always plans to attack countries and have war, and there's a bipartisan foreign policy establishment that wants that. There's a lot of reporting in Bob Woodward's new book about an actually incredible agreement among many Republicans and Democrats. There's a section of Lindsey Graham's conversations with Joe Biden about preparing to support Saudi Arabia with ground troops or anything else they might need, and Lindsey Graham saying that Republicans won't sign on to this if Biden is the president, but if Democrats have a majority, then they'll do what Biden says, or Trump. If it's Trump, you can never sell Democrats on it. I mean, it goes to say that there's more skepticism of the president's unilateral authority to make war when it's the other party controlling Congress, which is a good thing, I think. Yeah. What do you make of all this?
I mean, there's going to be an investigation. It's still alleged, but I think what you're saying about Bob Woodward's, the quotes that come out, they have been very concerned about nuclear escalation, and in a way that I was really surprised. I mean, we talk about that in the media, and of course, folks who come out of the military-industrial complex of D.C. talk about it on air, but to hear the quotes from Bob Woodward about how they threatened, Lloyd Austin basically didn't threaten Russia, for instance, for potentially using nukes or going in. And of course, Russia's defense minister said, "Are you threatening us, Mr. Austin?" And he said, "I am the leader of the most powerful military of all time. I don't make threats." This is pretty jarring at this point because they play these games. They play these military games, anticipating all different types of scenarios. They're obviously very sophisticated at this, but what's hard is when you have an actor who's acting out of the norm operation. You can't, the way Netanyahu's acting right now is not the way that our establishment has prepared, because he's so concerned about his own political survival that he is willing to escalate a war in the Mideast,
and he doesn't care what we say at all.
No, he doesn't.
Now, this is a great opportunity. I said this last week. It's great that the leader of the Hamas attack on October 7th has been killed. This is a great opportunity to now say, okay, enough is enough. Mission accomplished. Unfurl the banner honestly, and de-escalate this war before they kill literally every single person in Gaza. I mean, if that's what they want to do, we need to wash our hands of it. And our administration has said that's not okay. Right. We've said it's not okay, but we've not done anything to stop it. That's true of Biden. That's going to be true of Harris. I don't see any difference actually from her on contrasting with the administration's position on Gaza and what Israel is doing. Look, enough is enough. If their policy is actually, we will support Israel regardless, we don't like what Netanyahu's doing, but we're not going to try to stop him, then they should just admit that.
I think
that's what it feels like it actually is.
What's really difficult for them right now is it's too little too late. So now they are threatening that they will sanction them, Israel, if they continue, and that's serious. It's very serious. But that's like what you say, I don't know, in October of last year, not in October of 2024, but October of 2023. Mm-hmm. Now they're in a situation where if there is escalation, it's going to be very difficult to pass in Congress or otherwise anything that disarms Israel, because Israel will be surrounded. And of course, that's Netanyahu's game. He wants to escalate, so he continues to get those arms. He continues to have the U.S.'s support and Europe's support. Right now, it's this indecisive moment where obviously other countries are putting sanctions on Israel and not providing arms anymore. And I think that is per direction of the United States, because it is more difficult for the United States to disentangle, and it's not enough to just pressure. It's very hard for them to punish Netanyahu's leadership.
We could just stop giving them free stuff.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But now there's a situation in which they've got Hezbollah on one end, and Hamas on the other, and Iran might escalate. So in that situation, we are stuck as the United States.
Yeah, I don't want
our treaty. Not that it's mine.
Right. I don't want to sanction them. I don't want to haul them before some international court that, in my view, lacks all legitimacy. I just want to stop giving them free money to expand a war with their neighbors. I want them to make peace. They have responded to the terrorist attack. I think it was legitimate to kill the people who were the masterminds of, were responsible for the horrific loss of life that occurred. But we are not willing, the U.S. should not be willing to contribute to the outbreak of World War III. And Iran, I don't think actually wants that either.
100%. That's the other thing. They've signaled, and we see that with
terrorists
our
want
documents,
this. Nobody else
that Iran
does.
doesn't want it. Nobody wants it. Why are we escalating it? The Israeli people don't want it. The Israeli people, the majority, not all, but the majority of Israeli people are frustrated with Netanyahu. Oh, you could be so targeted in those little walkie-talkie attacks and target the Hamas leader. But meanwhile, in the last year, you were bombing every single building in Gaza, hospitals, schools, whatever, to basically turn Gaza into a parking lot for what? Your own interests, for folks who want to build hotels that they've published online the plans for? I mean, it's despicable, and everybody knows it. He's the problem. I mean, Iran, like you said, they don't want this either.
Yeah. All right, we'll have to see where that heads. Coming up next, a reporter for the Free Press says that a Pennsylvania education guru has received millions in public funding to promote segregation in schools. We'll tell you about that. A black nationalist gets $20 million to promote segregation in public schools. That was a recent headline from the Free Press. The alleged black nationalist is Philadelphia native Sharif El-Mekki, who's become a major influencer in public education, first in Pennsylvania and now beyond. He's even testified in front of Congress on the need for more teachers of color, that's a good thing, and has also penned various op-eds in national outlets and given a TED Talk in January of 2023 where he advocated for a connection between activism and teaching black students superbly. El-Mekki caught the attention and also the pocketbook of some of the nation's biggest philanthropists. His premise is, and here's where we get a little dicey, that there needs to be black education for black students. In other words, he thinks black students should be taught by black teachers. But isn't that premise sort of racist? I think if we insisted that white students had to be taught by white teachers, that would become perfectly obvious. The Free Press's Francesca Block wrote this story. She joins us now to discuss. Thanks for coming to Rising.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us more about this story and just how important this person is. We're not just picking on some random activist who has some ideas I would describe as kooky, but someone who attracted millions of dollars in significant public support. No?
Absolutely. And I think you covered well kind of what he does and the contradictions in his work. This is somebody who has the ears of some of the biggest influencers in Democratic politics today. As you mentioned, he's got $20 million in the bank for his nonprofit, and he's got funders like the Bezos Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. These are really big players that he's getting funding from and getting the attention of. And in addition to that, he also has worked on the transition team for Governor Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. He has worked with the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And so he really has gotten to the top in terms of influence on educational reform and being able to shape what the future of public education, at least in Pennsylvania and beyond, might look like.
And I want to make sure we're not misrepresenting him or anything like that. He takes the position, according to your reporting, that it might be better for black students to be taught exclusively by black teachers. I mean, that sounds like a crazy idea.
So his nonprofit advocates that black students should be taught by same-race teachers. That's under kind of their vision, their message on their website, in their programming. Now, whether or not that means exclusively black teachers, I'm not 100% sure. Unfortunately, I tried to reach out to El-Mekki for comment to try to talk to him more about his work, and he didn't get back to me. He didn't respond multiple times. However, I think when you think of the idea of, as you mentioned at the beginning, having more black teachers in public education, that's actually a very good thing. That sounds very good. It's probably good for America. I think where it does get dicey is, does he mean that it should be only black teachers teaching black students? And it sounds really kooky and it sounds really strange, but we actually have seen something like this implemented in schools across the country. In Evanston, Illinois, for example, there are actually classes that are segregated based on race for different subjects. Like for black students and Latino students, they can take different math classes than white students. And so it sounds really fringe, but we're actually seeing these types of ideologies being implemented in public school systems across the country.
Well, the devil's in the details, as you know, because we do have strong laws around this. And in those instances, I'm assuming it's not explicitly saying if you're a Latino, you can only take this math class as a Latino, and if you are an African American, you can only take this class if you're African American. I think, like all universities, there's a diversity of different types of educational experiences, different classes. On his website, it's very clear that they're just trying to rebuild the Black teacher pipeline. And I understand what he's stating in terms of, Black kids should be able to receive education from Black teachers, but has he had any sort of legal pushback? Because it doesn't seem like he's saying only Black teachers. It really just seems like they're trying to offer opportunities for Black kids to have teachers that look and understand them, and also just have a little bit more diversity of thought from teachers and experiences from teachers.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they've faced any legal pushback in their work so far, given kind of the level of influence he's had in Pennsylvania specifically. I assume they have not. And on that point, as I said before, I do think it's really important to try to recruit and retain more Black teachers in public education in America. But when you start to dig into the details of what are they teaching and training these teachers to teach their students, you start to realize that they are training teachers to be not necessarily educators, but to be activists. They say this specifically in their programming on their website, that teachers should be activists. And I want to quote here from one guide that his organization created with the Pennsylvania Department of Education, where they literally write that, quote, every lesson plan is a political document and every classroom interaction a political statement. And so I think that, again, training teachers, getting more teachers, Black teachers especially, into the pipeline, retaining them, making sure that they're happy and doing well in their jobs, that's a wonderful goal. But what are they actually teaching these teachers? And are they teaching them to teach, or are they teaching them to be ideologues in the classroom?
Yeah, this story reminded me of that document that periodically gets circulated and embarrasses everyone, the aspects of white supremacy training modules, which have been used in schools time and time again, that start to say that, well, here are traits of whiteness and here are traits of Blackness. And again, this is from people who are supposedly positioning themselves as the anti-racist, but are saying things like, yes, being on time is more an aspect of whiteness, or taking good notes, or being good at taking tests. Well, I think that's reinforcing actually some very negative stereotypes about Black people or other minorities. It's then, and to teach that to kids, it's almost like expecting them to fail and excusing it because of their race. It's the exact opposite we want in our schools. I want activism counter to that. I want teachers to behave as if any student, obviously the students have a range of abilities, but that has nothing to do with their race. It can have to do with the home life they have and poverty, and sometimes those things correlate with race because of reality. But to pretend that you can't succeed because there's something innate to your whiteness or Blackness or anything else, that's the opposite of what we want in our schools.
Yeah, and for this story, I spoke to a woman named Dr. Mika Hackner, who works for an organization called the Jewish Institute for Liberal Values. And she talked about this, and I quoted her in my piece, where, this type of education, it makes everything about the classroom, everything about school surround identity, who you are, whether or not your identity sets you up to succeed or not succeed. And her point, which I think is a really important one, is that if all we do in the classroom is focus on identity, we've kind of torn apart the fabric of what it means to be an American, to be able to talk to people and find common ground on many different issues, to be able to work together and overcome differences and all of that. And so she says that could be actually really quite destructive for civil discourse if this is the type of educational model that is adopted across the country.
Francesca, it does seem, though, as I understand what this woman quoted, but it does seem, though, that these teachers, they're looking at it through the lens as teaching is activism, not what we are teaching is political. It's that the act of having more Black teachers, because they're underrepresented across the country, is a form of activism, just like civic engagement is. But also, just from their website, these are still teachers who are teaching math and science. It's not like they're teaching some sort of Black power agenda. It's just they're trying to make a case for the fact that there are not enough Black teachers in schools. And of course, that's gonna, anger some folks, and they might think it's segregation, and it might even be branded in a way that can appear that way. But again, we have strong laws in this country, separate but equal, we all remember. And I think that from my interpretation, he is just trying to highlight the fact that there are not enough Black teachers, and especially in Black communities where that matters. Again, there's still a teaching curriculum. These are public schools. There's standardized education in these schools. And not to mention, while he may have worked for Shapiro on his transition team, it's still a Republican legislature in Pennsylvania. So have you seen pushback in Pennsylvania from the Republican Party there that is very powerful, as we know?
Well, I want to push back just a little bit on your first point, which is, again, that they're only teaching teachers to basically, enter the profession and want to be a part of the profession. I mean, again, just quoting from this guide that they made with the Department of Education in Pennsylvania, it's called the Anti-Racist Guide to Teacher Retention. And it says that education is a political act that can, and this is a quote, upend white supremacy and a racist history of using education as an oppressive social force. And so I do think that this idea of racial politics is embedded in how this group teaches and trains future teachers. And so I think that is something to consider and something we should talk about. This group doesn't keep it a secret. It's very public in all of their work that they do. And so I think that opens it up to conversation. Is that how teachers should be taught? And is that how teachers should be teaching students? In terms of Republican pushback in Pennsylvania, I haven't seen much in that regard. Again, he's worked with the Department of Education in Pennsylvania. He works with the Philadelphia School District, one of the biggest school districts in the country. So as of right now, I don't think he's getting a ton of pushback. I actually think it's quite the opposite. I think he's gained quite a prominent position and a lot of influence as a result.
Francesca, thanks so much for joining us to break this down. We really appreciate it. It was a fascinating topic.
Thank you both so much.
Donald Trump slammed CBS News for the October 7th sit-down interview with Vice President Kamala Harris. He accused the network of, quote, deceitful editing. Here is a side-by-side comparison of the clip in question. Judge for yourself.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
CBS fired back at the allegation, calling it false. They released a statement in CBS News Magazine Sunday, reading in part, quote, when we edit any interview, whether a politician, an athlete, or movie star, we strive to be clear, accurate, and on point. The portion of her answer on 60 Minutes was more succinct, which allows time for other subjects in a wide-ranging 21-minute-long segment.
Trump's campaign spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt, responded, quote, 60 Minutes just admitted to doing exactly what President Trump accused them of doing. This is another reminder of how hopelessly biased 60 Minutes is and how correct President Trump was to decline their invitation to be subjected to their fake news hackery. Release the transcript. Look, I think they're right. I think the edited version makes it seem like Kamala Harris gave a much swifter, stronger response to the question about Netanyahu not caring whether the administration is against what he's doing. The actual answer, the longer answer that is unedited, you saw her kind of fumbling through the response, making a claim that I don't think is true, that there were movements by Israel based on feedback we have given them. What specifically is she pointing to? Didn't we have a Rafah red line at one point? They went into Rafah anyway. We delayed, I think, one weapons shipment to them because we were mad. Other than that, it's been rubber stamped, even if we don't like what they're doing. So I'm not sure what has changed about the Israel response. I would like more detail from her. So I think that was not true, but it was a much more confused. So my point being, in the unedited portion, she makes a claim about how the administration has handled Israel that I do not think is true. In the edited version, she responds swiftly and is not seen to make that claim.
So when I watched this interview, I was also frustrated that it had been edited, but clearly not for the same reasons that Donald Trump is frustrated. It is not unusual for any of these news shows to do these. They sit down, they walk around, they spend the day with them. What are you going to do? Do 24 hours of a show with Kamala Harris? Of course not. Of course, they didn't have that much time with her. But if you watch 60 Minutes, that's how all of their interviews are. I really didn't like his line of questioning. I thought he was using Republican talking points instead of being thoughtful as as a reporter and, maybe asking clarification and pushing back. I think that gives opportunity for a better interview. That was my criticism watching it, is that it was overly edited in that it didn't really allow for a deeper discourse or a more thoughtful. Honestly, his questions just weren't thoughtful enough.
But this question is important because
it is, 100%.
And this is one of the only issues where there is some disagreement among Democrats on how to do. Like on most policies, Democratic Party is in a lot of the same places. If you're a Democratic voter, you're in a lot of the same places. Here, there's some actual disagreement. You see it in, the range of how AOC talks about this issue to how John Fetterman talks about it and everything in between. There's a lack of unity on this subject. And that's why it would benefit for Kamala Harris to be more precise about whether or how her policy differs from Biden. So I think it's a very important question, and I think the unedited answer didn't make a lot of sense, and so people should hear about it.
So there's the criticism of how this interview was conducted in content as a reporter. There's the criticism of how it was edited, and then there's the criticism of her answer. So aside from her answer, which I do believe she needs to be much more clear on, at this stage, she should be very specific. She should understand or have some sort of more elaborative explanation. I know she's trying to keep the Zionists in the party happy, and she's trying to keep the most progressive members of the Democratic Party happy, including the Arab American community in the Rust Belt states. But she does need to have a better answer. With that being said, in terms of the editing of it, that happens. That happens on every network. And Donald Trump is using that as ammunition. It's smart on his part because he's always blaming the media. But you know what? He does
You're right. You're right that editing itself is not wrong. Obviously, we have to condense it. We make choices in terms of TV, in terms of writing. If I'm quoting something, if I get a statement from someone, say I'm writing about whatever I'm writing about, I don't always put the full quote in an article. I take the part of their quote that captures the sentiment of what they're saying, and you have to exercise judgment when you do that. But that can be subject to scrutiny. So this is a case where I don't dispute it's not even their right, their need to do some kind of editing in order to make television, in order to make journalism. I'm criticizing the editing choice they made in this case because I do think the response in the unedited version was something people should hear about.
And I, as a progressive, am criticizing his approach in this interview because pretty much every question was out of the Republican handbook in which she had to defend, in some cases, completely bonkers claims where he could be a thoughtful journalist, which I think he is at times. But in this situation, I just felt like it lacked creativity, it lacked depth, and then the editing, of course, for both sides, I think nobody was really happy. I don't think Democrats were happy with this interview either.
Well, they're not happy because they thought it was Republican talking points. They thought it was too harsh. I mean, I think she should face, a level of scrutiny she doesn't often face because she doesn't do a lot of hostile or confrontational interviews. She's done more. She did Fox. This was before. In fairness, she did Fox News, and I've said I think that was a good thing to do it because it does neutralize somewhat the criticism that she's not, really willing to wade into the arena or she lacks the confidence in her abilities to do that. So fine, I'm glad she did it. And I think, the more that kind of thing is beneficial.
Totally, but CBS News is not supposed to be the ones doing those hostile interviews. That is Bret Baier's job, that is Fox News' job, and good for her for doing it. But 60 Minutes is supposed to be
their job to be supportive and,
Well, they have a great investigative news team. You'd think that they'd be a little bit more thoughtful.
I'm not
this
overly...
This guy is making a lot of money. Come up with your own line of questioning. Don't just, open up the RNC.
I actually I criticize 60 Minutes a lot. I would describe them as very agenda-driven for an agenda that is not my own, but is very much agenda-driven. They've had some... I would say bad reports, wildly exaggerating, engaging in moral panic over the spread of misinformation, over Havana syndrome. Did you see their Havana syndrome? Havana syndrome there are a lot of legitimate inquiries into whether it exists at all. It has been debunked multiple times by a range, from journalists to experts. It's okay to not trust journalists and experts, but from widely disparate ideological sources. And that they found some ticked off ex-whatever employee who's like, oh no, but I have Havana syndrome. And they put it forth so credulously.
But it was based on something where there were folks who were getting sick all around the world in State Departments, and they couldn't figure out what it was. So do you jump to the conclusion and say it's like radiation coming from Russia, in
Sonic weapon.
Sonic, exactly.
It's like the fence
Which, by the way,
on the island in Lost that stops
United
the
States
others
used
from
to do
coming
that.
under attack.
The United States used to do that.
Used to do what?
They would do radiation in different areas against certain prisoners. So that's a fun one to look up. Puerto Rico, Pedro Albizu Campos. Never thought this segment would turn into that conversation.
Well, we need to fill some more time. Coming up next, we'll discuss the latest news concerning, this is not a happy story at all, the investigation into P. Diddy and all of the sexual misconduct. Breaking news update, 7 new civil suits have been filed against rapper Sean Diddy Combs, and this is for the first time now discussing these allegations. We now know that other celebrities have also been accused of participating in one of those alleged assaults, though these celebrities have not yet been named. Now, the latest lawsuits include allegations of rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment, battery, or false imprisonment by Combs. The lawsuit includes 2 from accusers who say that they were minors at the time, that they were allegedly drugged and assaulted by the record producer.
This latest round of accusations includes an allegation that he drugged and raped a 13-year-old girl with an unnamed male celebrity as an unnamed female celebrity watched. The 13-year-old's name is presented as Jane Doe in the lawsuit, which says that when she was 13 years old, on September 7, 2000, she tried to attend the MTV Music Awards. She approached limousine drivers to see if she could attend an event after party. One of the drivers allegedly worked for Combs and drove the plaintiff to a party where she signed a non-disclosure agreement and accepted a drink. After one drink, the plaintiff said she began to feel woozy and lightheaded and went to an empty bedroom to lie down. Soon after, the plaintiff alleges Combs entered the room with a male and female celebrity. She says she was raped by the male and female celebrity and then raped by Combs as both celebrities watched.
This was, again, a 13-year-old girl. That's the claim. Now, anyone can make a claim about anything, to be clear, so these need to be properly adjudicated, but now this is an accusation not just of people who were already engaged in sex work. There were some allegations of them being given drugs to keep them performing, and this is full-on sexual assault of a minor at the property, that she was given a drink, incapacitated, and raped by Diddy and also another celebrity. So what we're really going to be waiting is to hear the names of these other people, and this sounds more and more to me like the music industry's Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Like this is the same situation because it's not just about him, it's about a vast network of other people who were involved, who either had full knowledge of what was going on or were themselves involved and said nothing for years, for decades.
Now, some of the people that were included in Jeffrey Epstein's ring, his operation, were, of course, prosecuted. Ghislaine Maxwell, obviously, being the one who recruited a lot of the young women. But, of course, there are people that we are aware of from his flight records and from other court documents over the last 25 years, since he did go into jail the first time in Florida, that were not prosecuted. Some people had separate lawsuits, like Les Wexner from Victoria's Secret. But what's interesting about that is it seems like a lot of the folks who may have taken part in this, and some who have even been named by some of the defendant or some of the plaintiffs in these cases, have never been prosecuted. And so I'm curious that even if the names
we don't even know their identities, even though they are presumably known to law enforcement, to the authorities.
And that's what's wild is they are. And why weren't they sued? So if you were potentially not just the victim of Elon Musk, oh my God, Jeffrey Epstein, excuse me, oh my God, that was a mistake. If you were a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, or if you were at his island, and another person who was a celebrity assaulted you, I'm just curious why that person was never sued. And is this some part of, oftentimes they'll go after, federal law enforcement will go after the top person because other folks who are involved will cooperate. And so will that happen in this situation where Diddy will be the fall guy, as he should be, by the way, that he should definitely be prosecuted, and maybe a few people around him, maybe the Ghislaine Maxwell of his world, but maybe we won't know the celebrities ever because they'll be providing information. And I really hope that's not the case, because if that's our only way to law enforcement, to these investigations through law enforcement, we really need to re-examine how we prosecute these rings, because it shouldn't just be one person or 3 people liable. Everybody who's involved, any sort of rape should be prosecuted. The government should not be protecting folks just for information in these situations.
Of course not. And the concern that so many of the public have is that in the Jeffrey Epstein case, rich, powerful people, people in politics, people in business, Prince Andrew, the British royal family, people were protected because the system, the elites in the system are themselves, right, it's their friends who were liable here, who were involved in all this, so that they went to elaborate lengths to hide from us the involvement of former presidents or the leaders of financial companies like the Bank of America, Virgin Islands, Bill Gates. A tremendous amount of interactions still between Bill Gates and Jeffrey Epstein post the period where he was arrested initially. This is one of the reasons, if we're reading between the lines, I think, that Melinda Gates decided to divorce Bill Gates, was over his association with this man. So that's what happened in the Epstein case. The question becomes, in the Diddy case, will we see that same level of a desire to perhaps protect powerful people, to shield them from scrutiny because they're the friends of the system, of the elites, of the authority system? And it might not be as politically relevant here, so maybe you won't have that.
I agree. Maybe,
but of course, celebrities are, influential people too. Celebrities have a lot of influence, some degree of influence and currency in the Democratic Party, as they're all endorsers of Kamala Harris, enthusiastic backers. George Clooney is one of the people more responsible for Joe Biden getting out of that. No, I'm just saying that.
George Clooney does not deserve
absolutely not. I'm just saying that Hollywood people are political and have
they're also
involvement.
Businesses. So think about it from the point, if you're a producer and you own a company, a record label, that is a huge industry. I mean, you are bringing in young talent like Usher and Justin Bieber, as we know, and think about all those times Justin Bieber was getting in trouble when he was, 16 years old, doing just wild things, and you found out he was drinking and he was on drugs, and later it seemed, he's definitely cleaned up his act, but it seemed like he had to move through a lot, as I'm sure Usher did too. They've been silent. Usher is doing a rally with Kamala Harris, and good for him, and Justin Bieber just had a baby, but these are folks that have been more visible in this recruitment effort of Diddy's. And let's not forget 50 Cent. 50 Cent for over a decade has been talking about P. Diddy doing these things. And now, not only is he producing a documentary on it, but he's come out and said that, P. Diddy was involved in Biggie Smalls' death. I want a documentary on that now. There's so many different stories that are going to come out of this, just like Epstein, just like these other big rings. It's going to be entertainment for years, but hopefully we learn our lessons. And I don't think business like this should be built around sexual acts. That's what's confusing, is like they were trafficking things, there were guns, there were young sex workers. By the way, legal. It's not legal to rape them, and it's not legal to drug them, so it's still...
Right, I support legal sex work of adult women and men, adult men and women, not underage and not against their will, and not taking drugs without their knowledge or consent that affect their decision making. One of the reasons I support legal sex work is you make it, we probably agree on this, you make it safer and less prone to abusive people taking advantage of you when it's above board instead of black market type thing.
Hopefully, but when you have an industry like the music industry, it's hard to avoid it. If a 13-year-old girl who wants to go to an after party, and I feel so bad for that girl because when you're that age, it's like fangirl era, and you...
Yeah, but it should be pretty obvious that you're 13 and you've got homework tonight, go home.
Clearly.
Jesus.
And the bodyguards, too. I understand that they're informants now, but they should be held accountable as well if they're helping facilitate these operations.
Well, of course.
It's really disgusting, and I don't know, maybe we've reached an era now where at least law enforcement can take this more seriously. That's what really frustrates me, is in both Epstein and the Diddy situation, law enforcement was aware.
Everyone was aware in the Epstein situation.
Yes.
Because he went to jail.
Went to jail already, and then they're like, no big deal.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing.
He got a very light sentence given what he had, because he was basically just house arrest. He could come and go from the jail as he pleased. And then he continued his abuse.
He continued. He learned.
Yeah. We will continue to follow that story in the days and weeks to come, and we have a lot more to talk about on Rising today.
Former President Donald Trump made vulgar remarks about the late golf star Arnold Palmer while campaigning in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, where Palmer was born. Let's watch.
Arnold Palmer was all man, and I say that in all due respect to women, and I love women. But this is a guy that was all man. This man was strong and tough. And I refuse to say it, but when He took showers with the other pros. They came out of there, they said, oh my God. That's unbelievable. I had to say it. We have women that are highly sophisticated here, but they used to look at Arnold and say, bad, but he was really something special. Arnold was something special. So I just want to tell you, you're very lucky, the people that live in Detroit, and it's an honor for me to be here because of him. And he was actually he was a great man, and I don't think there would be golf to the extent that you have it today. It probably wouldn't be that way without the great Arnold Palmer. So enjoy it, everybody. Enjoy it. And I had to tell you the shower part of it because it's true. What can I tell? We want to be honest. We want to be upfront. It's true.
In the world of golf, Arnold Palmer does loom very large. His daughter told the AP, quote, "There's nothing much to say. I'm not really upset. I think it was a poor choice of approaches to remember my father, but what are you going to do?" CNN's Jake Tapper, however, wanted to explore this topic as fully as possible. The anchor repeatedly confronted House Speaker Mike Johnson about it. Let's watch.
Why is he talking about Arnold Palmer's penis in front of Pennsylvania voters?
Jake, you seem to like that line a lot. Let me tell you that Donald Trump is doing rallies nonstop around the country.
Let me just say something. I don't want to be talking about this. Right. Donald Trump is out there saying it. It is.
But you continue to. Let's talk about.
Because you won't address it.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
You won't address it. He is out there talking to
voters. No, I'll address it. Let me answer it. Okay, don't say it again. We don't have to say it. I get it. There's lines in a rally. When President Trump is at a rally, sometimes he'll speak for 2 straight hours. You're questioning his stamina, his mental acuity. Joe Biden couldn't do that for 5 minutes. That's how you started this segment. You said, "What if Biden was in a rally like that?" He couldn't fill the room.
And this went on for quite some time. That was the end of several minutes on this subject on CNN. It was a kind of an odd thing to bring up. It was kind of funny, maybe uncalled for. I liked the daughter's response. I don't see why it's such a scandal. And CNN has freaked out about this. I read Brian Stelter's newsletter this morning, Reliable Sources, where he's like, he's calling out Fox for not having wall-to-wall coverage of this. Who cares? What is this? It was just look, Trump says some things that other people wouldn't say in polite company. I don't, and sometimes they're bad. This doesn't seem like one of them to me. It's funny. What say you, Nomiki?
Nothing is relatable to steelworkers in Pennsylvania as a nice Gulf shower story for the audience to take in. I think it's comical. I think what they're trying to do, and they should be doing, and maybe they need to be a bit more sophisticated at doing, is articulating how Donald Trump is not just losing it, but he's dangerous, right? Some of the stuff he says, some of the rhetoric...
This is neither losing it or dangerous.
Right, well, it's losing it. Some of the stuff he says is dangerous rhetoric that definitely comes from his mental state and his inner beliefs and the filters that he used to, put up. Maybe you're like, oh, maybe Trump will do this. No, Trump actually did call to arrest, use the military to arrest his political enemies. And then other times it's just like the filters of locker room conversation. Maybe, I don't even know if it's true, to be honest. I don't want to know if it's true. His daughter doesn't want to know if it's true. But
don't you think it's
unhinged?
It's boy who cries wolf kind of thing to say. I agree with you that the comments he made that you've repeatedly referenced about political opponents were not great. I don't think there will actually be some fascist door-to-door arrests of progressives in this country, but I see why you could make a case that it sounds like that's what he said. So that was a bad thing, and it's fair to criticize. But like that. So that's bad, but again, CNN type people say there's literally everything. He talks about what he talked about in the clip that we just played, and they're like that. I don't think that's evidence of mental decline or fascism in particular. It's just he just said something was actually I guess complimentary about Arnold Palmer. I don't know.
But I mean, this is a repeat.
Wasn't for general audiences, but.
It's a pattern. I mean, he said he was the father of IVF last week. He danced for 40 minutes.
But that means he's supportive of it.
But okay, no, it's not. The father of IVF means you founded IVF and you created it. And he could say, I'm supportive of IVF. Instead, he has to be the father of IVF, the founder of it all. I am the God of the universe.
I'm, so frustrated, I'm going to literally set myself on fire. I don't actually mean I'm going to set myself on
You
fire.
don't.
Sorry to all the haters out there. It's not going to happen.
But it's indisputable. You know this
colorful
very well.
language.
It's beyond colorful. It was colorful in 2016, and we didn't know for sure where it was going to go. Now it's authoritarian tactics. It's defending everything he says and changing the story, and creating stories and using social media to speak to his echo chamber. Calling himself the father of IVF is an authoritarian tactic because, of course,
calling himself the father of IVF is an authoritarian. He does not want to ban IVF. He wants to subsidize IVF.
He does.
He's called for it to be publicly paid for.
It's the language of father. I am your father. I am going to save you. I have the biggest you know what. My friend had the biggest you know what. He was the best guy. That's why.
We had so much of that commentary, by the way, for Tim Walz from the media about, he's like your dad. Doesn't he remind you of your dad? He's so dad-like. Dad this, dad that. It's weird.
Good dad.
No one.
Versus bad dad.
That's
dark dad versus light dad.
No one should be. I think it is very weird and creepy to view political figures in a family or friendly or no. They're career politicians. They are seeking power. In fact, they seek the responsibility to decide how you live your life. There's something inherently creepy to me about that. I know Democrats want to wield that weapon only and always against Republicans. I think the whole exercise is creepy. And I think a lot of what was done in Minnesota under COVID was profoundly creepy and not dad-like at all. But it's the selective outrage over...
It was more mommy state.
Mommy state. I don't want a mommy state or a daddy state or a nanny state.
Nanny state.
I want a...
about that.
I want a my state is just me and I set the rules for that and
you can live on a little island in the middle of the Pacific that's been undeclared.
Sounds good to me.
Have your own laws.
Robby land?
Robby land. And then you don't have to pay taxes.
There are no taxes in Robby land.
How are you going to build your infrastructure? Where are the roads going to come from?
With private investment.
Private investment.
Just like we get everything else.
Yeah, well, there's going to be some moment where you're going to need some public dollars, and that's going to be Robby dollars, right?
Robby, we're going to have our own crypto. We'll just do crypto.
Have
our own currency. Yeah.
Of course you're going to do crypto.
Yeah,
why am I shocked by that?
It'll be great. Anyway, that was the update on some things you wanted to know or maybe didn't care to know at all about Arnold Palmer.
I learned that Arnold Palmer was not just a drink, and he's actually a golfer.
He's a golfer. I'm not golfing. Biggest sports fan, but I love golf. I actually love golf.
Of course you do. That's the other thing about this, is that talking about golf with steelworkers, Arnold Palmer's father was.
No, everybody loves golf. You can be a working class person and like golf.
Where are they playing golf? Golf, it costs money. It's expensive to play golf.
You can watch it. I don't play very often. I like watching it on TV.
Who likes watching golf on TV?
Everybody's talking of dad things. Literally every single person's dad.
It's so boring.
Find me a dad who doesn't want to do that.
My dad.
Oh.
I don't know. Maybe I'm odd, but anyways, Arnold Palmer, not just a drink.
And I drink Arnold Palmer.
Update to the ladies.
It is a good drink.
I assume the ladies. I shouldn't gender specify.
Yes. How dare you? Crime against wokeness. Haul her out to the gulags. That does it for us today on Rising. We're getting less serious by the second. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of our content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere that you can find podcasts. See you tomorrow.